and youth entrepreneurship as well. It's truly an honor to have her today, and I'm sure that you all will get to learn insights about how to build your personal brand and gain inspiration from her journey.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I hope you're ready to learn. I hope you're ready to get excited about your brand, who you are, what you can do for the world, what your purpose will be. I hope you're ready to get excited about your brand, who you are, do for the world, what your purpose will be. You're ready to get excited about your brand, who you are, do for the world, purpose will be. I'm hearing an echo. Can you hear me okay? Do to the world, purpose will be. I'm hearing an echo. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right, can we ask you to mute echo? Can you hear me okay? Echo? I hear myself talking in the back. Okay, great. There we go. Excellent. All right, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to get started with just talking to you guys about your brand with my own story of personal branding. So I hope you're ready to learn. I hope you have some pen and paper because we're going to actually do this in a very interactive mode. So it's going to be really fun for all of us to learn more about what branding is and how we can best brand ourselves. So I'm sharing my screen right now. Can you see my screen? Yes?
No, Miri, we can't see your screen. Can you just share your screen at the bottom?
Yep, I'm trying to do that right now. Yep, so it is okay. There it is. Hopefully you can share it now. You can see it now. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So your brand, what is your brand? Your brand is actually not what you say you are, not what you put on your resume. It is actually how you make people feel. Feeling is the center of any brand, a corporate brand or personal brand. People will get to know you. People won't remember the things you said, probably won't remember what you wore. They'll remember how you made them feel. And that is what personal branding is. The problem is most of us, don't know how to do that. Don't know how to make people feel the way we want them to. Don't know how to actually center ourselves in a way, present ourselves in a way that actually makes people feel the way we want them to feel. And that happened to me, right? So when I first started this journey over 7 years ago, I was in a bad spot in life. I didn't know where it was, what I was doing. I didn't even understand what elements of branding were. These things I had to learn by myself. And quickly, as I began the journey, I started to learn that a brand has a mission, it has attributes, it has a character, it has a story, and it has a lot of digital presence. Today, in today's world, your social media presence is your resume. I'm sorry to tell you, if you didn't know that, it is that. We are looking at everything of who you are, not only in your resume, not only what you show up on LinkedIn, but really who you are as a whole, because we know you're not just a student, you're not just a worker, you're a brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, your friend. All of these things make up who you are, and they are your brand. You don't separate them. They're your brand. And so I didn't know that. In fact, when I started this whole journey, it was about, like I said, 7 years ago. I first started at Microsoft in 2012. That is my first profile picture. And, I was really excited to come in. Microsoft had called me and I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'll come work for Microsoft. And so something really bad happened. I was bullied. I was getting bullied by 4 women at Microsoft. And at first, I didn't even know. I was like, oh my gosh, like, is it me? Is it this culture? Is it the industry? I was really shocked that this was happening to me. I had imposter syndrome all day long. I was like, I probably don't even belong here. I shouldn't be here. I didn't go to Harvard. I came from the slums of Venezuela, and I just made my way up, and I just didn't know that I felt like I didn't belong. And for me, that person that you see on that picture was someone who had no purpose. I didn't know who I was. Up until that point, I was just kind of navigating life, as it came. Just it's like life just happened to me. I went to school, I did my thing, but I had no purpose in my life. And with that, I also had a mix of personal attributes, meaning I wasn't intentional on who I was. One days I was kind, other days I was not kind. Sometimes I was sarcastic, other days I was mean. I was just a mix of attributes that were not geared toward anything because I didn't know I had to gear them toward anything, right? I had no character definition. I didn't know who I was in my own story. I knew I had a story. It was my life, but I had no idea who was the driver of my life. Was I the CEO of my life? Who were the other playing characters? I didn't even know who the characters were or who I was in my own story. I had no story. Again, up until then, I was kind of living my life along not having a purposeful story about myself, a purposeful brand about myself. And you know what? If you Googled my address, you would if you Googled me, you'd probably just find my address and my parents' address. That's it. If you Googled me back then, because there was nothing on me. I had not set myself a digital presence. I did not know who I was, and people didn't know who I was. And so this moment when I was being bullied, I came to work one day. I was so upset because one of these women, actually two of them, really did something to me again, and I had a really bad day. And so I got up and I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I grabbed my laptop. I was literally walking out, quitting. I was like, I quit. And I walked out, and this one of the program managers grabbed my arm, pulled me into a conference room, and he said, you're not going anywhere. You're not quitting. Microsoft needs you. You need to stay here. And I was like, no, I don't. And they're like, you do. So go home, take a chill pill, come back tomorrow. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. I don't know if I'm going to come back tomorrow. But I went home. I went home and I thought about it. I asked myself, if I came back the next day, what would that look like? Why would I come back the next day? What's the purpose? Why would I submit myself to being in this place where I don't want to be with people who don't want me here? Why would I come back? And that enabled the first thing in my personal branding. I began to understand that I had to have a mission. And this is what I came up with at that moment. Nobody told me about it. I had no mentors. I had nobody. I had no friends. I was just myself thinking about my purpose. And I said, you know what? If I come back, I need to find out who I am and why I'm going to come back. And at that moment, I used this statement that I created myself, which I'm sharing with you right now. The same statement is true today of who I was going to set out to be. Not what I was, but who I was going to set out to be and why. And so I said, okay, right now I don't know what I am. I don't have a brand. I don't have anything, but I want to be this and this because the world needs. So I gave myself a purpose. Who is the world though? Well, the world is an audience. The world is a target audience. I needed to find out why I wanted to come back to Microsoft. And at that moment, I decided I would come back for younger women in tech. Women in tech that were coming in out of school, out of college, maybe early in career, who possibly were getting also bullied at Microsoft, but nobody was talking about it. Nobody was talking about it. So I came in and I said, you know what? If I start talking to them and if I start talking about it, probably I'm going to find more stories. And that was true. We found more stories. So I made the world's a big place, right? I made my audience, my target audience, my girls, my younger women in tech. So the first thing you have to think about is how are you going to go out with this brand and why? What are those attributes for your audience? It starts really, truly with your audience. So for me, I was like, okay, if I'm going to target these women, these younger women, they were probably, I was in my 30s, my early 30s. So they were in their early 20s. So there was a 10-year gap. I was like, how do I show up to them, right? How do I target them so I can talk to them, so I can be relatable? Because if I show up a certain way, they're not going to talk to me, right? So if I want to target this audience and want to get their stories and share my own stories, if my purpose is going to be to continue bridging that gap of the 2% of women that are in the tech industry, I want to make sure that I target them well. So I did this first thing, and this is your first homework for today. If you haven't got homework today in your hackathon, right? Your first homework is you're going to go out and ask people, how do you show up? That's your baseline. You don't know where you are today. You don't know what your brand looks like. You don't know what you're making people feel, if anything at all. I didn't know back then. And well, I made a mistake, actually. I made a lot of mistakes. But one of the mistakes I made was I asked a whole lot of people, hey, how do I show up? Hey, how do I show up? Hey, how do I show up? And a lot of people gave me answers. I found out I had a lot of haters. A lot of haters. So I suggest when you go out to find people to say, hey, how do I show up? What is my baseline? Where's my brand today? Before you target anyone to find out where you stand, that baseline you're going to create, do it with people that you know love you, that you know want to see you win, that you know care for you, and they are for you. Professors, friends, family members, some family members, not all family members, family members, mentors, colleagues, people that you know you well, and they can give you this answer straight up and honest. You're going to go use tools like anonymous surveys and say, hey, I took this personal branding hackathon class, and the person said, I need to find out how I show up. Can you please tell me anonymously so they can have the ability to share with you really honestly, candidly, how you show up? What happened to me when that happened is I got a lot of answers, like I said, and I've started finding patterns, right? I showed up in many different ways. I showed up loud. I showed up Latina, colorful. I showed up sarcastic was another one. I showed up feminist. And those two stuck out to me. Sarcastic and feminist, because at the time I was like, okay, well, sarcasm, yeah, I'm sarcastic. What's wrong with that? You know what I mean? But there was a lot of wrong with that if my audience was going to be these young women in tech, because I couldn't show up sarcastic to them. That showed authoritative. That showed up, not tone deaf, if you will. Some feminist was another part. Of course, I grew up feminist. My mom, there's 3 sisters, and we grew up in the slums. We had to fend for ourselves, right? We had to hustle all the time. So yeah, I was feminist. Of course, I was feminist, but I realized feminism could be construed with extremism. And the women that I was targeting, the young women in tech, they were finding this gap between, trying to bridge this gap between being self-sufficient as women, but also being completely independent. What does that even mean? Can we truly be independent? No, I have a lot of people that help me out all the time. Success is a team sport. I didn't make it on my own. I have mentors, friends, people that slap my face all day long. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't show up saying I'm feminist, and then people are like, oh, she's one of those, right? Especially here in the Western world, feminism can be misconstrued to be something extreme, almost men bashing. And I have 2 boys and I have a husband. I don't want to be a men basher. So I had to define my brand. These are attributes that you get to define for yourself. When you think of your audience, if you say, hey, Miri, I want to target, IT pros. That's my target. I want to talk about AI. I want to talk about the hacks. I want to target tech companies. That's your target audience. How do you show up? How do you show up today? And what is the aspiration to how you're going to show up later for them? For me, I had to change. I had to modify my sarcastic brand and my feminist brand, and I toned it down a little bit. And so I decided I was going to be feminine and kind instead of sarcastic and feminist, right? Because I needed to know how I showed up first, and then understand who I was targeting, and then aspire my brand to that. So that begins your purpose, brand, mission. Think about your audience. Who do you want to target? You may have multiple audiences. That's fine too. We'll talk about that in a minute. But think about your audience first. Who can I target? Why do I want to target people? Maybe it could be kids in school, kids, younger audiences, middle schoolers. It could be older audiences that don't know a whole lot about tech, and you can teach them. Why do you want to teach them? Why do you want to serve them? In what purpose? And who do you need to be to show up relevant to that specific audience? And then the last 2 are really important. And the magic of these 2 is storytelling, right? We're going to get into storytelling because I'm a storyteller. And so I use stories to brand yourself, to brand yourself corporately, to brand yourself personally, however you want to brand yourself, storytelling works. So this is what we're going to do. Ready? First thing I want you to do is, I did say, if you want to grab some piece of paper and some pens. Mine is extra because, I'm Miri. This was actually a gift for my book signing. Okay, so grab a piece of paper if you have it in hand. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put a dot on the piece of paper somewhere at the beginning. Put a dot, and that is going to indicate your birthday. Okay, that's going to be your birth date. That's the day you were born, somewhere in your origin story. You're creating your origin story. So this looks like a little bit like this for me on the screen. I was born in 1978. I know, I can't believe it either. I'm that old. For me, it's not a high or a low in my piece of paper because, I was actually the middle child. My sister was born before me. I wasn't the middle child then when I was born, but my sister was born before me, my older sister, and everybody loved her. Everybody's like, oh, the baby, the baby, the baby. And then my mom got pregnant again. It was a surprise pregnancy. And it was like, oh, me, who's this? She's getting born again, like another baby so soon. So I really wasn't welcomed much. So I'm kind of flatlining on the day I was born. Maybe for you, your day, the day we were born was an extra day. It was amazing. Put it on a high, right? Make sure it's like up here. It's like, oh yeah, the day I was born, it was really, really good day for me. Or maybe it was a low. Maybe it was like, hey, wasn't best of circumstances when I was born. That's true too. That's when your story begins. You didn't ask for it. It just happened that way. And then you're going to start to actually pinpoint the next big memories right? All the way to present. I'm not going to do that for myself because that's a lot of memories, but I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what you're going to be doing to create a quick version of your origin story. This is going to help you in finding that purpose for your brand and branding yourself to target it the best way. So here you see a little bit of my story. My low next after I was born was my little sister being born, because she kind of came in and now I'm the middle child. That's not ever fun. Then actually I moved, which was a really nice high. I moved to the city from the slums because my dad was able to buy an apartment from one of my aunts. And then I moved to the US in 1992. Was not a good experience for me. I was not happy there. I was culture shock. My dad was very strict. So it was like, we're not Americans. We're not going to be Americanized. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Right. Then I graduated high school and got married soon after. So a lot of stuff happened. What I'm trying to show you here when you do this exercise of highs and lows, peaks and valleys of your brand, it's you're going to uncover a lot of ideas and patterns of what made you who you are. What are those moments that shaped you? Those encoded memories that you have in your mind do come up in this exercise, and you start thinking about who you are and what got you here to this moment, to the present. When you finish this, you're going to be able to think about this storyline. That's your storyline. And then you can understand what is storytelling. In fact, for me, I didn't even know what was storytelling when I came to do this work at Microsoft. So I actually asked a whole lot of people, professionals in the field who call themselves storytellers, people in brands like Disney, Hyatt, Marriott, Amazon, Google, a lot of great brands that were doing good storytelling. And I asked them not what is storytelling, but what it is not, right? Hey, I'm confused. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to take a piece of paper with information, with data, and turn it into a story that will turn into my brand. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me out? So they said, yeah, absolutely. When they answered all these questions, they said storytelling is not this stuff. It's not opinions, it's not data, it's not facts, it's not possibilities, definitely not marketing. It's not exploitation. It can be, but it's not. It's not posting, content on, stories on Instagram saying, calling yourself a storyteller. So if it's not that, then what is it? Right? And to me, I didn't find the best definition online. So based on all the stuff they told me, I went out and defined storytelling for myself. And this is what I have for you. It is the emotional transfer of those opinions, of that information. It's you taking these data points and taking it and making it so emotional that people will remember your story. That is what gets you further away from the resume. We can only read a resume with a lot of information, with a lot of data. The paper doesn't tell me what you're about. If you say, I went to this school, I don't know how you got into the school. I don't know if you had to work 12, different hours of the day to get into that school. I don't know if you had to fight hard to get into that school. The story doesn't tell that. The paper, the resume doesn't tell me that story. You tell that story. And that is what differentiates you in the market. That is your value proposition. Your story is what people want to know. And you could say, hey, Miri, my story is inconsequential. Like nothing's happened to me. I've lived my life. Wrong. You have gained insights in your own journey that I haven't, because your journey is different than mine. And we have learned different things throughout our path that even now that I don't know about you, but if you bring me that insight, I learn. And so you do have stories. You do have things that you've learned in your life to share with people, but you have to first put it in story form. How to do that? Where do we begin? Well, I'm glad you asked. I didn't know how to begin either. I was doing this job for Microsoft in core services engineering, and I was brought to actually tell stories that were for data and AI. Very deep technical stories, white papers, turning those white papers and those how-tos and even those case studies into connected human stories. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to go do that? I failed like crazy. I failed for 3 months. I failed. Luckily, I was taking a class in design thinking. And some of you may be actually very familiar with this 5-step approach. Design thinking starts with empathy. And you can actually prototype things. You can prototype products. So I went to my professor and I said, hey, can I prototype stories? And they're like, yeah, you can prototype whatever you want. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to go do that. And that's exactly what I did. So when you think about this, when you think about your origin story, when you think about your target audience, when you think about your attributes that you're kind of putting together right now in your head, I know not all together, you're going to go do this later on, but when you're thinking about this, it's top of mind. The next thing you have to think about is empathizing with that audience. For me, empathizing with 20-something-year-old women in tech was different. because I forgot what it was to be 20-something-year-old. I was already 30-something-year-old. And so for me to be relevant, for me to show up, hey, Miri, how do I dress? How do I brand myself? I dress and I brand myself by empathizing with my audience. I know that I can't look 42, the age that I am, because if I do, I'm not relevant. So the same thing, if I was going into a boardroom, if my target audience was going to be CEOs, I dress up, right? Because my audience is different. I'm not going to go look like this. This is for my target audience right now, not for them. So you empathize in many ways with your audience. What does that look like? Well, you first have to understand what empathy is. I learned I was not empathetic. Actually, I learned that was a soft skill that you could learn. But at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not empathetic at all. What is empathy anyway? Well, I learned that it's an experience. It's not just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, it's walking a whole lot in those shoes until you get it, right? So it's an experience of understanding people's lived lives, backgrounds, diversity, intersectionality, thoughts, emotions. What are they feeling at the time? And so I took a test and learned I was not empathetic at all. In fact, I took the Clifton Strengths test, which told me my level on empathy was 33 out of 35. Terrible. I failed that test too. But I learned that you can actually bring empathy as a soft skill, and you can learn it. And I have. In the last few years, I've learned to be more empathetic through this exercise. I learned there's 3 levels of empathy, okay? The first one is cognitive empathy. That basically says they are human. That the people that I'm talking to right now, all of you, even though I haven't met you in person, I haven't had the honor, that you're human. And for that reason alone, you who is watching right now, there's stuff going on, right? There's stuff going on all over the world. There's people getting sick. Maybe you're sick. Maybe your parents are sick. Your friend is sick. Maybe someone you know passed from this terrible illness. So we have this stuff happening in our heads, the human condition. If I make myself stop and think about that, I'm going to be more empathetic to you as I deliver my content. I'm going to be tuning in more to you, not just saying, hey, I'm just going to go deliver because I have to present. I'm really taking time to understand that some of you could be dealing with a lot of challenges right now. And I understand that. I'm being empathetic, right? A quick exercise for all of us today to think about empathy is to stop for 2 minutes during the day today. I know your day's almost over, but even before you go to sleep tonight, and think, wow, how is someone with COVID feeling right now? Physically and emotionally. How somebody who's at the hospital right now, who's struggling to breathe, right? That makes us empathetic when we zoom out and stop thinking much about ourselves and how this is impacting us personally, but how it's impacting the world, our neighbors, somebody next to us, right? Even people that we don't know. The second level of empathy is emotional empathy. And it really talks about we are human. It allows me to take these points and talk about them and not be ashamed or not be embarrassed or not think, oh my gosh, somebody's going to hate my story. Why would they care about what happened to me when I was a little girl? They care. People care because it makes us human. It connects our humanity. When I tell stories of embarrassment, people laugh and people are like, oh my gosh, that happened to me too, or something similar happened. It connects us. It reminds us we are all human. So it allows you with empathy, you are allowed, you give yourself permission, shameless permission to go out and share those stories. Maybe not all, but some of them. And that is what makes you relatable and relatable to the people that you're actually targeting. Another quick exercise that we can do in this emotional empathy is thinking about what one person does affects a lot of other people, right? We are one as a humanity. So we're not islands. What I do, it's not just about me. It affects people around me, extended people around me, and even more. So have that in mind when you make decisions, when you go out there and brand yourself. The way you do that will impact people. In fact, when I thought about my brand, I was like, well, do I want my brand to be global? Do I want to be talking to people in India? And I said, yes, I want it to be global. And so it took me years to get there, but I branded myself in a way that I was relevant enough to people in other parts of the world. If I would stay sarcastic, for example, that doesn't resonate in places like Africa. I know that very well because I've been there. So again, think about your brand and think about your relevancy. How big do you want your brand to be? The impact that you will have will be extended, even though you have a cohort and a targeted audience. Now my audience is bigger than just those women. They continue to be my target audience, but you will expand it, right? The last empathy level it's actually compassionate empathy, and it's I am human. I am human, and for that, I get to be vulnerable. For that, I get to share my own stories again, shamelessly. I don't have to worry about what other people say, and I don't. It's just me. This is my journey, and I get to share it. It's a scary, scary thought. I know. I've been there. I've posted things on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are gonna hate it, right? But once it's out there, it's out there. And guess what's happened to me? Most people have responded positively. Most people are like, oh my gosh, Miri, thank you so much for sharing that journey, because I've been through something like that and I just was afraid to talk about it. That is branding. It's the feeling you give people. Think about your stories. Think about what you've been through. Think about what you're going through right now. How you can share that. You'll be surprised how many other people are possibly going through something similar. And when you talk about your learnings, they learn too, right? That is branding. So check in with yourself. Recognize your own emotions. Write them down, journal. These moments right now of COVID, of global pandemic, are really impacting all of us. We're all emotions are high. I'm hyper, stressed out right now. This is crazy. I'm claustrophobic. I take time to tune into myself and talk about that, because it's important. The more you check in with your own emotions, the more you can check in with other people's. That makes you empathetic. So that's step number 1 to storytelling. Okay, we're gonna move on quickly because I know we have a lot of things to go over. So number 1, you empathize. You empathize by asking yourself, what is that universal truth about my story? What does that mean? Well, you see here it's a pyramid, Maslow's pyramid of needs. You may know this theory. This theory is around the idea that all of us have basic needs at the human level, the core human level, and then we seek to self-actualize. Success is like at the end, at the top of that. And no matter where we come from, no matter our gender, no matter our geographic location, all of us as humans want to get there, right? So what that means is when you talk about your own journeys, your peaks and valleys in your story, there's a universal truth. There's a thread going on that people can talk to and can lean into and they can relate to. In my specific audience, the universal truth is belonging. We all know what it is or not to belong. I didn't feel like I belonged at Microsoft when I first came in. I almost quit, right? And I was like, if I'm feeling like this, there may be some people that be feeling the same way. So belonging was my universal truth. I don't have to explain that word, that feeling. It's a feeling. I don't have to explain to people belonging. You know what it is to belong. You felt belonging and you felt possibly not, like you didn't belong at once. So that is what I'm talking about. What feeling are you going to give your brand? How do you want people to feel when they come in contact with you? Empowered, inspired, knowledgeable, right? That's the kind of thing you have to start thinking about. Designing your brand story is really about empathizing and finding that universal truth. Next, define your characters. I told you earlier, I didn't have a character. I didn't know who I was in my own story. In my story, I define myself as the Robin to the Batman. I'm not the superhero. My girls are the superheroes. They're the ones who I want to see them win. Why? Because one day, very early, I'm going to drop off. I'm not going to be in tech anymore, possibly. I'm done. I'm in my career. I'm probably at the peak of my career. And I recognize I have a few years left, and that's it. Then I get to retire or whatever it is I'm going to go do. Travel the world again, whatever. So I know that these girls who are now, when I get into my 50s, they're going to be at peaking in their career. They're going to be the strongest one. They're going to be driving inclusion and diversity in tech. And so I am the enabler to them. No longer am I just saying, hey, you belong. I'm empowering them to belong. I'm giving them tools. I'm mentoring them. So my brand began with a specific purpose of just saying, I want people to belong in tech, women. And then it turned into, I want to empower women in tech. I want to give them my tools. I want to tell them how to best do this. I want to tell them to get out there. I want to show them what it is like as a woman of color, right? So I became the Robin to the Batman. They are the superheroes. I'm kind of the sidekick, right? So think about you. Think about your character. Who are you in your story and why? You could be the hero. That's awesome, right? But you have to define that. You have to define your story mission, your audience, your character, your plot. What are you going to share? How many of those points are you willing to share with the audience? For me, I found out my girls love stories that are relational. Taught stories about when I broke up with my boyfriend, when I broke up with my friend, like when we had a heated argument. They want to learn that. They want to know what happened in my life. So I tell them, right? I didn't think they would want to know, but they want to know. So you start to learn what your audience wants, depending on who your audience is. IT pros, you guys are IT pros. I know your audience. I know who you are because I've targeted you too with our content in Microsoft. IT pros like very, very poignant how-tos. Hey, get to the point. Tell me bam, 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 and I'm going to go do it, right? So if that's what you're going to do, who are you to that story, in that story? Who are you? The enabler who tells them, who educates them? Are you the friend, the educator? Are you the guide to telling them how to do things, how to best get there? What is the best hack to get there? you see how this is playing out? You're empathizing with your audience. You're defining your character, your audience, your conclusion, your plot. And look at this. This is how I was able to fill that up with my content, right? With these 2 steps of storytelling. I'm feminine and kind, as I said earlier. That's actually my aspirational brand. I wasn't that back then. Okay, I was sarcastic and feminist back then. I was wanting to be feminine and kind. That was my aspirational brand. I'm feminine and kind because my girls, my audience, not the world, my girls, I probably won't get to 8 billion people. That's okay. My girls need reassurance that they belong. Do you see that feeling? They need that reassurance. In order to do what? To close the equality gap. When I leave tech or when I leave this world, there's still girls who are going to be doing this who were empowered by me at a very small level, but then they empowered other women, and those empowered other women, and daughters and daughters and daughters, and we're closing that gap. That was my purpose. Now my brand has a purpose, right? So I encourage you to think about this. I encourage you to think about your brand, who you are today. Look at what people say. Hey, Miri, how do I show up? Okay, when you ask that question of how you show up, you're going to get the answers. And you're going to be like, hey, do I like this brand? If you don't, you change it. You can aspirationally change it. Say, hey, I don't, if I show up shy, that's attributes are not good or bad, by the way. Shy is not a good or bad thing. It just is. Do I need to show up differently if I'm going to target a specific audience? Ask yourself that and plug this in and see how it works. I hope this is making sense for everyone. And then you give that story a mission. So this is your brand mission, right? The first one is your brand mission. And then your story give a mission. This is where you're going to tell this what to do. You have these data points. What are you going to go do with this? You're going to dedicate that story to your audience. My story is dedicated to my girls. And then I went out and did a whole lot of research for those girls. Who are they? What do they like? What motivates them? What not? My brand became very intentional. I know what they like, when they don't like. I ask them questions. They tell me, right? I ask them for their opinion. I want to know what I'm doing right or wrong, how I'm doing it right or wrong. And so for me, that persona I created for my audience became very important. Once you define your audience, you'll know what your audience wants or doesn't want, because you can start learning them more and more. And then it can help them, like I said, feel reassured. The feeling is reassured that they belong, and make them feel like they belong, right? Make them feel like they have a seat at the table. That's the universal truth. That's the feeling I walk away with. Then I design the story. I'm like, okay, I have data points. I defined my character. I defined my audience. I defined who I was going to be in my story. I defined my story mission. I gave my story a mission. I created a persona for my audience. And now I'm going to go have fun. I'm going to go define this story. How is it going to play out? What channels am I going to use? What colors do I use? Do I use blogs? Do I use LinkedIn? I don't know. I'm going to go find that out. So this ideation phase is all about brainstorming ideas. What you see here is called the Scamper. Scamper is an acronym, as you can see here, that actually gives you ideas on how to find different levels or angles of your story. Hey, Miri, what if you replaced the character? What if you talked a whole lot about your dad and then you stop talking about your dad, talk about somebody else? That's replacing a character, right? What if you modify the plot? What if instead of talking about you living in Venezuela, you talk about living in Miami? Right? Modify the plot. Focus more on a different geographic location. What if you eliminated something from the message? What if I decided I'm not going to talk more about being bullied at Microsoft? I'm going to eliminate that piece, and now I'm just going to talk about how I've been able to stay at Microsoft for this long and pivot 4 different times at Microsoft. That's me eliminating something and actually pivoting something different, right? So you can actually mold your storyline, and you should be, as things continue to happen, as you continue to build these plots, because this never ends, right? Until you die, you're still gonna have moments that you're gonna have to weave into your personal brand story, but you're intentionally weaving it in and sharing what you think is the best idea to share for your audience. Replacing something, combining something, all of these things. I often ask people, what does your brand story look like? If you were to, for example, describe it to a blind person in color, right? What does your story smell like, right? Think about the layers of your story. The best way to do something like this to Scamper is to take six pieces of paper like this and storyboard your story without any words. Just say, this is my life story in six different panels. That's it. Put them around your room and create 6 panels of your brand story. And not with 1 word, and see if people understand it. See if they can understand the peaks and valleys and the climax of your story and the conclusion where you are today and the things you've been through. That's a great exercise for you to actually be able to animate your story differently and think about these different layers. And then you create it. You create prototypes, right? Prototypes are low cost, low effort ideas. Basically, you're going to go and say, I'm going to go tell my story. I'm going to go share a little bit of my story. I'm going to change maybe on top of the resume. It's really important. Use this idea to actually, the real estate on resume, instead of saying keywords like I am a team player, I am a achiever. Who cares? Why are you a team player? What made you a team player, right? That's the story. You use that real estate in your resume to tell that story. I came from the slums of Caracas, Venezuela. I'm a hustler. I'm empathetic. I learned to be empathetic. Now I'm a servant leader. Well, I want to know more. I want to know more about you, right? It's not keywords anymore. It's not data points anymore. It's story. So here you see these are 8 techniques of storytelling. There's way more. This is just 8 basics. I'm going to just go over a couple of them so understand a little bit. The first one here is this guy falling into the little hole. That's called in media res. It's translated from Latin to say in the middle of the things, in the middle of action. So that's the kind of story you're going to go out and say, my mother died. Whoa. Okay. So you shock people with it, and then you kind of loop around and talk about your story, and you grab people's attention with the climax, the highest point in your story. The bottom one, it has a little lion there. That's called the Lion King, or the hero's journey storytelling technique. That one is very popular. A lot of people use it. Most Hollywood stories are made of that. It's really around this transformational journey. We all have it, right? We all have a growth story, obviously. Hopefully, we continue to evolve. So that always works. Stories of transformation always work for people. On the top left, if you're Latina like me, your stories live right there. It's the stories of drama, peak drama. We're very dramatic people. But that's the story of, basically building up a lot of very, very important peaks and very low valleys. You're not going flatline here. You're just sharing a lot of different things that are going on to keep people interested in what's happening. And you're going to find those. Again, if you do go through this exercise, you're going to find them. So this is really about designing your story and taking people through a journey. If this doesn't exist, if one of the storylines don't exist for you, create one. You're the storyteller. It's your brand. You're the CEO of your life, and you get to decide that for yourself. And then, when you think about digital, how you can present yourself. So once you create these story concepts, right, you go out and you ideate, you have a brainstorming session, you create your panels, like, okay, I have a couple stories I want to share about my brand. I'm going to go out, I'm going to target people. I'm going to target Microsoft because I want to get hired. I don't know. Then you define how you're going to go out there. If you look at this is actually a LinkedIn post, and it's me and my dog, right? I was talking about how pets help us during COVID. I can do this right now because I've been doing this for a little while. Right? I've been gaining equity with my audience in a way that a post about my dog doesn't seem dissonant. Like if I just showed up and posted my dog, people are gonna be like, oh, Miri, what happened? But I've been building my brand in a way that I've slowly been prototyping and testing in the market different stories that people tune into. And so I listen to my audience, and my specific target audience, not everyone, because a lot of people have a lot of opinions, only my target audience. And if they like it and they continue to connect, then I continue to give them a little more, and I can build that equity. So here you see how I can go on LinkedIn and share something like this. I've had people say, well, Miri, that's not Facebook. I'm like, well, thanks for letting me know the obvious, Captain Obvious. You're not my target audience, so thank you. I deleted the post and I blocked them because they're not my audience, right? So you empower yourself. You empower yourself with your own content to say, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to put myself out there, tell a story to my audience. More often than none, your audience will receive it. They will be glad that you shared something. Your content for your brand should always be 3 things. It should be educational. It should teach them something. It should be inspirational, and it should be personal. This post here is educational. If you click further into the post, you'll see that I talk about the fact that pets actually help you with mental health. So I talk about data points, really learning information, not just saying, here's a cute photo of my dog, right? But then I go into inspirational. Oh, my dog is 8. Here he is. Here's a photo that inspires, right? And then it's personal. It's me and my dog. So that's a really good mix of quick content that people love. Now, I also have different channels. So Twitter, as you may know, Twitter is a little bit more of an audience that is IT for me. My audience is my followers are possibly a lot from Microsoft and other industries in the IT, other companies in IT, sorry. And so I get a little more sarcastic or snippy, or a little bit more. It's less of, here's a picture of my dog, right? I'm more of like, this is a target. I look at my channels and I see who my audience is. A lot of men are my audience here. And so I give them stuff they want to know. Right now, I'm actually talking about my book because my book came out, but you'll see a lot of things that I talk about: branding, companies, marketing, because that's my audience. So I want to make sure I give them something, again, educational, inspirational, and personal. And then, of course, Instagram is where my my main audience lives, my girls. And so a lot of my posts on Instagram are more around my person, my stories, things that have happened to me, my travels. It's less around business and more about helping them with what they need. So a lot of times when I get a lot of questions from them, I take to Instagram and I tell a story and I share with them what they need from me, from one to many. So going digital and thinking about your stories, yes, you can have different stories and different channels, but always keep your same theme along. What is my theme for my girls? To have them belong, right? To have them belong. And yes, I do market myself differently and I do show up differently, and I should, in different channels, but I am still kind and feminine. That's who I am. That's what built myself to be. And so when I share this, or I share this, or I share this, I ask myself, is this kind and feminine? Is this kind and feminine? Is this kind of feminine? Do I show up kind of feminine, right? And that's how those attributes play in. That's why that's super important. And then look at this. I Googled myself, and now I even have a Google panel, right? I spent a few years building this brand, and now people got curious. Who's Miri? Who's Miri? Who's Miri? Who's Miri from Microsoft? Who's Miri? Who's the storyteller? Who's Miri? And then I Googled myself and I have a panel, right? And so that's what happened. I created a brand for myself based on my own need to help someone, to help a cohort. It was beyond myself. It wasn't just for me. It was for me to leave a legacy. And that's what's truly, truly important. So you take this content and you test it. You define it, right? You empathize with your audience. You define your character. You define your mission. You define your audience. You create different ways to tell the story, right? You ideate different ways to tell a story, and then you prototype it. You go out on different channels and do different things, and you test it. And you say, hey, did the story, my brand, did it evoke the emotion that I wanted? When you came in contact with Miri, did you feel that she was feminine and kind? Did you feel that she inspired you? If the answer is yes, oh my gosh, I did a great job, right? That for my audience, I may not inspire everyone. I'm not here to inspire everyone, but some of you that fall into that cohort, right? If it did that, then win. I'm going the right direction. If not, well, maybe I need to rebrand. Maybe I need to do something different. Maybe I need to change something. Maybe I need to go into another channel. Where's your audience? Are they on TikTok? Maybe I need to get on TikTok. I don't know. So it is really based on your mission and your audience, who you're going to target, where they are. Don't ask them to come to you. Don't build a website and say, okay, everybody, I just created a website. Come like it. Nah, nobody's going to do that, right? You go where they are and you share inspirational, educational content from your lived experiences. Your insights are unique to you. Your lived experience, where you came from, the way you consume content is much different than me. It's this idea of all of us go to the theater. We all watch the same movie, right? Same content, but we all take different learnings from that movie. And that's what life is. We're all taking different learnings from our life journey. So what you have to offer the world is much different than what I have. And there's enough people to target different ones. So change something, continue to go until you start finding that people are responding to your content. How do you know that you're doing it the right way? Because people respond. People respond emotionally. When you like something that moves you in your emotions, you share it. Oh my gosh, did you hear that song? Oh my gosh, did you watch that movie? Oh, did you read that poetry? Because it's emotional. So test it until you actually land it the best way. Branding is how you make people feel, and how to make people feel starts with your story. Your story is your brand, and how you shape that, and how you build it, how you craft it, how you create this differentiator in the market with your story will be the one thing that nobody else will have. It will be authentic to you because nobody else has your story. Your origin story is your differentiator. And remember, stories are for your audience, not to your audience. That means that you're going to use empathy. Again, you're going to use authenticity. You're not just going to be like, oh, I'm going to build this whole thing, just throw it out there. No, you're going to take time to craft it, to learn who your audience is, to learn what they like and what they don't like. You're going to take time to actually define your audience, who you're going to go target, right? And ideate. The person I was in 2012, I'm not today, right? I've grown, I've evolved clearly, but my brand is still the same. When I decided that, a few years ago, I'm still trying to be feminine and kind in everything that I do, but I ideate to reinvent myself as my audience grows or my channels are different or whatever it is. Continue to ideate. It never ends. Storytelling is a verb. It never ends. And lastly, do it with heart. Do it with heart, because that is the one thing that that you have. That in the age of digital, of automation, of robots, the automation doesn't have heart. You have heart, and that's why it shows up real. It shows up passionate when you do it with heart. That's what I got for you. I hope that you take time to connect with me. I know that we'll have some questions in the end, so I wanted to give some time for that. I know it was really fast as well. There was a lot to unpack, but hopefully you were able to kind of get the idea around how to best brand yourself with storytelling. Connect with me, please. Again, the book is out if you want to learn a little bit more, a little deeper into the brand storytelling idea. And I'm here to serve you in the best way that you want. So I'll take questions now. Do we have any questions?
Just checking the live stream for any questions.
Okay. Was that good?
The question is, what is the use of branding?
What is the use of branding? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. The use of branding is for you to enable, especially right now in the digital world, for you to enable your footprint of who you are and your purpose in life. The use of branding is for you to let people know why you exist. Why are you out there doing what you're gonna go do? It enables you also, it enables people to get to know you. So ideally, when you think about, for example, getting a job, right? We know very well that getting a job, especially in today's market, is very hard. So what does that mean? Well, you're gonna probably have to get to know someone. You're gonna have to talk to someone who works in the company that you want. It's who you know. It's who you know. It's who you know. No, branding allows you to say, it's who knows me. Right. In fact, I get a lot of job offers all the time because people get to know me. They find me first and they hear about me because I branded myself and they know what I am about before they even have to interview me, if you will. You will find that people want to work with people that they get to know, that they want to work with people that are, that have something to bring to the table. So if I let people know ahead of time what I can bring to the table by branding myself, they already know. And then it actually saves me the purpose of the steps of having to get myself known at the time of wanting to get a job, of getting into a school. I've already branded myself this way so they know who I am beforehand.
So another question is, what is the biggest obstacle which you encountered in your career while doing branding?
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacle is thinking about people who don't appreciate the brand or who are blocking my brand. I've had a lot of people who, when I go somewhere, when I do something, they have a negative opinion or they don't want me to do something a certain way. And the best way that I've learned to manage that is through creating my own set of values. For example, I grew up in a very strict religious home. I'm Latin, and so my family is it's very similar to the Indian culture, and so it's very male dominated as well. And so for us, it's expected that we get married young, that we have kids young. Career, it takes a back burner, and so I had to learn to kind of move away from those ideals that I was taught to build my own brand the way that I wanted and build my own core values. So you're gonna get a lot of people. I had a lot of people in my own community saying, "What are you doing, Miri? You should be home. You should be taking care of your kids. You should be doing this. Why are you out there doing what you do?" And it was my own set of values that I had to, basically hone into to drive my life the way that I needed to for my own success. And it's not that I stopped being mom and doing other things that I was doing. It was more about not letting those people define the path for me instead of defining it for myself.
How do you get to know what the audience wants from us?
Yeah, so you learn that. You learn what the audience wants because they're going to tell you when they don't want it, right? So it's important to notice two things. First is, who is your audience and who is just everybody else who's not your audience? Because a lot of people who are not your audience are going to, again, have an opinion. Do you care what they say? Well, not really. I wrote a book. My audience is not my mom. And so I love my mom, but if she tells me she doesn't like the book, it's okay. It wasn't for her, right? She's not my audience. So I have to make sure that I don't focus my energy on people that are not my audience. And I do focus on the ones that are. So once my audience says, hey, Miri, that sounded off brand, or that, or they don't even respond, then I know it wasn't compelling. It wasn't compelling to them. So I'm going to go back and test it. Again, the idea of branding yourself is as a prototype. It's a fail fast approach. You're going to keep failing. You're going to keep trying. You're going to keep trying what is next until it starts working. And you will see it work because, again, as I said, because it is emotional, people will respond when it works. So the fails are gonna be the way not to do it. They're gonna be the way to move away and test a different way, a different color, a different channel, a different, maybe if you did a long article, maybe do a short one. I use LinkedIn, for example. I don't use the article piece because I learned my audience likes the feed content. So I only do the feed content. I don't do articles. So you're gonna learn, your audience kind of guides you in a way on how to do it next.
So next question. Yeah, Hunar.
You had mentioned about mentors. So how do you exactly find mentors in tech?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so hard. So hard. Put yourself out there. Ask people. The best way that I learned to get mentors is by asking small things of them, not a whole like, hey, become my mentor right away. But I connected with them, people that I admired, people that I connected with on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, can you spare me 1 minute by answering this one question? And so people will typically respond to 1 minute. They won't ask, you can't take an hour of their time because they're very busy, but maybe 1 minute. Or you can say, hey, would you mind just virtual coffee? Can you do a digital virtual coffee for 15 minutes? I just have a couple questions. I just want to connect with you for one-time mentorship. And you send them a Starbucks card, digitally, and then they respond because they know that you're not just taking from them. You're actually considering that they're busy. And then you build a relationship from there. I've had mentors who said no to me. Like straight up no, I'm busy, sorry. And I was like, okay, well, this is the beginning of negotiations, so I'm gonna go and ask them another. And I was like, well, okay, thank you, I realize you're busy. How about I stay in touch with you, and then via email, if I have a question, can I just send you an email? And they're like, yeah, okay. Like, they won't say no to that. And then I started sending emails, right? Email, and then months later, they're my mentors, right? So you build that relationship little by little, considering that people are very busy, but they do want to help. Most people that I know do want to help. So put yourself out there, try different ways, and see the responses. Any more questions? I know I get a question a lot around, around personal branding, on how to do it. How do I start? Where do I start? With all these things that I just shared. Really start with reflecting on who you want to be to the world. You get to decide that. So I know it feels like it's unintentional, but it is intentional. Actually, a lot of people that you see branding themselves, they dress a certain way. They have a certain speech. They have a certain audience. If you study them, you'll observe that they've created the brands around an audience, and that's very important. So I recommend reading books around purpose, around your passions. This idea of your origin story will enable you to think about things that you didn't even remember. For example, for me, I didn't know I was a writer. I forgot I was a writer. But I remembered when I did this exercise that I used to write poetry books when I was around 7 years old. I had stacks of books, that I wrote. So I put in my 10,000 hours as a writer. I just didn't know it. So when you go through this exercise, it really helps you understand what the passions of things that you just did innately when you were a child, that really lit you up, set your soul on fire, and things that you want to do. So really, it's a way for you to rediscover yourself and your passions and weave that into your story.
So there's another question.
Okay.
The resume can't show our personal brand. So how do we reflect it to the recruiters?
Yeah, that's a great story. So from a recruiter perspective, especially in Microsoft, I'll speak for Microsoft. We are looking at diversity, not only from a marginalized community or a diversity of minorities represented in our company, but also from your origin story, right? For us, it's really important to understand what you bring to the table and why. When you sit at the table, what is your thought process? Because you've been through so many things in life. That's where your origin story plays in. So how to present it for recruiters. You have different ways. If you look at, for example, my LinkedIn profile or other people's, I don't just talk about my job. I don't just talk about who I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a so many things. So I really weave that in and make sure that when people look at my profile, by the way, we no longer can share due to GDPR privacy. We can't share paper resumes. So if you send your PDF, I really can't share it with someone. But what I can share and what we do share is the LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile right now is is your digital footprint. So make sure you update it. Make sure you have the latest photo. Make sure you're sharing content. Make sure you're sharing what you're learning, right? Write an article, say, today I learned this. Today I learned about this. And really, really just share who you are, all of who you are. And that gives that glimpse to us of your origin story. Get out there, talk about it, because we are looking at those profiles. And so that is the best way. It's going to go beyond your resume. Of course, your resume tells us your degree and it tells us your pedigree and your experience, which is important. Of course, we want those qualifications to match from a candidate. But beyond that, there's a lot of candidates, right? There's a lot of people with similar qualifications. What makes you stand out? Your story. So get really good. Again, use the exercise that I shared. Brand yourself in a way and share that purpose. I exist to do this. This is what I want to go and do in the world. This is what makes me passionate. This is what I want, how I want to align with Microsoft values. Why I believe Microsoft is the company for me, because it aligns with empowering. I love to empower people. I've done this in this way or that way. And that is what's going to make you differentiate in the market.
How should students deal with imposter syndrome? Because many students are apprehensive of their own capabilities and they refrain from taking part in various opportunities.
Yeah. Oh gosh. It's imposter syndrome is real, and I get it all day long. It never really goes away. I tell it to shut up. I tell it to shut up a lot, but it's always there. Imposter syndrome is this idea that I don't belong here, that what I'm doing is not good enough, that I am not good enough. And it really is the best way to deal with that is to tell yourself that you are. In fact, there are so many statistics around people that you believing that you're not good enough, and then people actually, you're more critical of yourself than people of you. And so you have more to give to the world than you believe yourself to be and to give. And so talk to yourself positively, say, hey, I'm going to go out there. And especially when you have a target audience and they are receptive of this, it validates you as a person. When I talk to my girls, it validates me. So I'm like, well, I may not be good enough to be this or that, but I'm good enough for my girls. And that validates me, right? So having that target audience really helps you, because as you target them, their content and how they respond validates who you are. You're never going to be, there's always going to be someone better, prettier, smarter. There's always going to be someone with a better degree, with a better audience. There's going to be somebody who with more followers. There's always going to be that. So don't compare yourself to that. Compare yourself to who you are and who you become, right? From your story, who you are. And that will help you positively look at yourself and go forward and not get paralyzed by what other people think or by you comparing yourself with other people. Nothing good comes out of that. There's nothing good that comes out of you comparing yourself to others. In fact, I learned that those people that show up really good usually have a lot of stuff going on in the background that nobody knows about, because we're all human. It's that condition. So imposter syndrome, tell it to shut up when you hear it. Hey, you shut up. I don't want to hear you. I'm good enough. I'm going to go do my thing.
If you could give an advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Oh gosh, I'll just sit myself down for a long time and be like, listen. Wow. For me, I think it's just to keep going. My younger self was full of fears. I was so full of fears. I was so scared that people wouldn't want me, wouldn't like me, wouldn't take me serious. And I would just sit myself down and say, Miri, just go, just get out there. It's going to be fine. I think it's important to also know you're going to be fine. Things are temporary. Sometimes we get fixated on not getting the job, not getting the school that I wanted, not getting. And when I think about what really is important, family is important, people is important. Your legacy to people is important. That's why I believe personal branding goes beyond your self-actualization. Is how, when you actualize yourself, you actually deliver a legacy to other people, how you impact the rest of the world. That is the best thing you can do. And that's the best thing you should do. So I would tell myself, keep going. Don't let the world change your smile. You change the world with your smile.
Okay, so there's another question. At times, there might be a clash amongst your audience, conflict of what people in your audience would like to see. So how do you decide to entertain them all?
Sorry, how do I decide to do what?
Cater to all of their demands. Like, If there's a conflict between your audience, then how do you decide to entertain them all?
Yeah, so it depends, right? Where do I want to go? So if the demand, if my audience, my target audience shifts or pivots and says, "Hey, Miri, we want you to start doing something," we'll start doing. It really is up to me how to define that. For example, I learned recently, very recently, that my audience really wants me to do videos. I typically don't do a lot of videos, and so I have to decide that right now. Is that something that I want to do? And that really I measure it against my ROI, my return on investment. What do I get out of doing something that my audience wants me to do? Is it something that I can do? Is it something that I want to employ my time in? Do I have the time to do it? So in the list of my priorities, my branding, for example, I've arrived to a place where I can decide that right now. If I had started at the beginning, in the beginning, my audience was like, we need video, I probably would have spent the whole time doing video, become a YouTuber, I don't know. But it was something that wasn't necessary at the time. So where you are in the line of branding, if you're just starting, my recommendation is do what your audience demands and the majority of them. So if you have a split audience, decide, hey, where do I want to go? Where do I want to spend my time for this audience? And what will give me the best ROI? You're going to get a lot of people in your audience as well, again, that are opinionated and not necessarily is something you want to do. Fill that demand all the time. So you get to decide that, and your audience response. Again, it's a long haul approach. It's not an immediate approach. So you're going to find yourself through that journey and brand yourself the best way based on your audience response.
One question that I have is a personal question. So when we put our personal that's my question. If we put our personal lives out there, like we're showing that we're out with friends and everything, does that decrease our value, or does it help in building? Does it make us vulnerable to a certain audience that we don't want to deal with?
Yeah, again, it depends what your audience is telling you. If they're criticizing your content truly to help you, if you know that the heart behind it, if you feel the heart behind it is, hey, Miri, this content didn't sound right, or it's just tone deaf, you should really be talking about that. I take that. I actually go back and I'm like, hey, maybe that makes sense. I want to listen into what my audience is saying. With that, I've had feedback from people that it's a lot, to take. And I'm like, do I want to dive deeper into this? A lot of people have a lot of demand, and sometimes you have to balance that out. So it really is up to you how much you want to brand yourself and give of yourself for this audience. If you're starting your journey, again, my recommendation is that you listen into what they're saying and take it with a grain of salt. Again, people are very opinionated. We all have opinions about other people. And you kind of have to define how you want to go about it, how much energy you want to spend on it. Branding is also a journey. It goes along with other things that you're doing, right? So you're having the job, you're trying to get the job, you're trying to finish school. So that's just one aspect of who you are outside what you're doing, your hustle to get yourself known. So you get to define that. If your audience is being extremely demanding and maybe you don't want to target that audience anymore, you can shift. It is really your brand. You can pivot. You can expand your audience. You can create a hybrid audience. So really, it's up to you how you want to manage it. Again, the amount of energy you want to spend on that, it's depending on you and how aggressive you want to be with branding yourself. I wasn't aggressive at all. It took me about 5 years to really build the audience that I have today. It took me that long, and I didn't go aggressively. Again, I didn't go on YouTube. I wasn't not trying to be an influencer. That was not my job. I was just trying to connect with a small group of girls. That was my audience, a really small. It started maybe 15 group of girls, and that's how it just began to grow organically. So that wasn't my goal. Define your goal. Do you want to be an influencer? Is that important to you? Then you have to do the things that those influencers do. If it's a small group of audience, a local, for me, it was local, then I wasn't worried about the rest. So I didn't go about it that way.
What do you do when you hit a low?
Right. I do a lot. I do a lot of things. I have a lot of different hacks. I go to my happy place. I love ice cream. That's one of the things I love. And so ice cream makes me happy. Find a small thing that makes you happy. A small thing. If it's singing a song, if it's reading a poetry, if it's calling your boyfriend, if it's calling your girlfriend, whatever it is that makes you happy for 2 minutes, it's a quick hack of like reset when I'm not feeling well. If I'm really, really down, I allow myself to be down also. So that depends on my own mood. But if it's a a quick of like, oh man, I'm claustrophobic. I want to get out of here. I'll eat ice cream. I'll do a little bit of yoga, something that's a quick reset to my body to remind me it's not permanent. It's going to go away. It's just a bad day, not a bad life. If it's something deeper, I do allow myself to go through the emotions the full day and just really kind of soak in and really feel it. I feel my feelings a lot. And then acknowledge them and see, okay, what am I going to do next? What do I want to do with these emotions? What do I want to do with the situation? But if you can find a happy place, whatever the happy place is, if it's writing, if it's coding, if it's, playing a video game, is watching a brainless show, whatever it is, do it. Hack yourself for a moment, half hour, an hour, and really give yourself this idea of happiness for a moment.
And how should people deal with failures in life?
How should what?
Deal with failures in life, whether it's on the professional front or academic.
Yeah. So this is going to sound very cliche, but I promise you it's true. Failures have taught me that I am not a failure. Failing doesn't mean I'm a failure. Failing means I'm a doer. That really teaches me that I'm out there doing things. You don't fail unless you do things. So I've set out to do things. And so I have learned from my failures. I've learned, but I keep learning that it's okay to fail as long as I fail fast, right? So what I've done is I sulk for a little bit. Oh man, I failed. It sucks to fail. I hate failing. It makes me feel bad. It bruises my ego. Okay, dust off, shut up, imposter syndrome. I'm going to move now and learn from that. What did I learn? How did it make me feel better? Or how did it make me better? How did it grow me? What is the life lesson? Move on and move forward. And so failing to me, I've really, really taken it to see what is the learning in this situation. What did I learn? And I've learned that sometimes I don't learn immediately what it was. And I hate that because I'm like, what is the learning? What is the lesson? And sometimes I don't learn it. But it is something that I will find out later on. Maybe the failure wasn't even a failure. It was a detour. It was a closed door that I didn't see in the future. I was like, oh my gosh, thank God doesn't answer all my prayers, because I would be completely in a whole different path, right? So failures are, sometimes we look at everything like it's failure, and it isn't. Really evaluate, zoom out of yourself and be like, what does this really mean? What is the universe trying to tell me? And why did was it me? Was it the circumstance? Was it someone else? What happened here? Sometimes other people create failures for you. Sometimes other people make you feel like you're a failure. So really think through that.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we're done with the questions. And thank you so much for sharing your inspiring life journey with us. And I'm pretty sure that we all have learned something new in today's session about how to create our own story and to sell our brand.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I hope you get to connect with me personally if you have any more questions. But I really hope that this was helpful for you to think about how to intentionally drive your own brand story and brand yourself with it, because that is really what differentiates you in the market. So more than anything, more than your resume and you went to school, what you're going to be here to do in the world is really important. And I'd love to see your stories, all of you. I'd love to see what you're going to go out and do.
Thank you so much. It was really an honor for me to learn from you.
Thank you. Connect with me. I'd love to. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Folks, do share your origin stories on Twitter and tag Miri Road and @HackOn Hackathon to win an exclusive t-shirt.
And do check out Miri's book on brand storytelling.
It's available on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
Also, we'll be sharing a link for the certificate in the chat right now.
Yep. Wait.
Do remember to share your origin story on Twitter. I have mine here.
Also, subscribe to Coding Logs. They have been a great help for us. Hunu, can we update the certificate form?
Yes, it's done. It's already done.
Okay.
So go and fill the form now.
Folks, we have updated the form. You can now check the session listed on the form. Okay, let's kill the stream and tata, bye bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you for joining.
Bye, everyone.